Hello, everyone. Welcome to the HockeyBuzzCast again, and welcome to the first HockeyBuzzCast since the Olympics have actually begun in earnest.
Yeah, I was going to say the beginning of this buzzcast is as spectacular as the opening ceremonies, right, Jillian?
I mean, the opening ceremonies I always have very mixed feelings about in general.
Right.
Just because it's just so much. There's so much money, but there's also you're celebrating athlete. It's just a very, even tweeted out, like I just can't put all my thoughts into 140 characters on that, and I'd love to be able to.
Can't imagine why.
Big
you have to put every thought you have into 140 characters. That's the way the world works.
Well, I mean, it was like a couple years ago when the Olympics were in Sochi. I mean, there was this massive extravaganza at the beginning of it, and it was celebrating Russian history. I'm like, okay, you just skipped over that 90 years of killing and oppression that went along with the Soviet Union. You just sort of skipped over that. But other than that, you know, the Cossacks, the Tsar's family being thrown down a mine shaft, the purges, you forgot all that stuff. But yeah, let's celebrate the great Russian history. And with Brazil right now, to me, everything that's overwhelming, the Olympics is, the Zika virus, is the cesspool that the water is around there, the safety concerns. I mean, I'm not the biggest of Olympic fans, but with this one, I'm more concerned about it just getting through the 2 weeks with people safe and healthy. And no.
Yeah, but we can't. What are we supposed to do about that, Mike? I mean, honestly, like,
there's nothing.
I mean, what are they? I mean, even down there. I mean, even we're talking about years of issues in Rio with some of this stuff, right? We're talking about like,
right.
But I think there legitimately are good people trying to make this work. And
but they said they were going to have this. Now they were given this Olympics 8-10 years ago.
Yeah,
that was back when they were having their biggest economic boom in
and it was,
history.
and it's easy to say that. I mean, Venezuela is even worse than they are. So I mean, it's like there's whole.
Then the IOC should have taken the Olympics away from when you're basically rowing and swimming through raw sewage. Then you should basically take the Olympic Games away from Rio and put it someplace else.
That's they're not even taking, despite all of the FIFA scandal, like when you're talking about this large of an organization, obviously there's corruption, right? That you can't, when it gets to be that big, there's no way there's no corruption. I don't think anybody's denying that. But the amount of money and everything that goes into this, I don't think you can just pull it that quickly. I mean, if you look at just like a comparison is FIFA and the World Cup, they're not pulling the World Cup from their next locations, and probably not even from Qatar. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I don't think it's just as simple as you pull the bid. I think they would have to do something extreme, very extreme, to have their rights taken away from that.
And you really, it's like that in a way. I mean, I'm not saying that raw sewage. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are bad, and there's a lot of issues that are really, really bad. But then again, do you want to take all the life out of this country? I mean, this is something that actually is there's a positive that can come out of this. Now we've talked before, and so it's a little bit devil's advocate. I've been to places like that have had Olympic Games in the past that we talked about this, that where the place has fallen in disarray following it and all that. And I get that Yugoslavia, what this did in Yugoslavia, what this did in other in other places as well. But at the end of the day, I don't think Rio is the same kind of a place as that. Rio is a pretty damn big city. It's a pretty culturally sound place that's been around for a very, very long time. And it's not, Croatia, it's certain things, it's not those, it's Rio, and Rio is in a down time now, and will it survive it? Yes, it will survive it. How it will survive it, who knows? But it's not going to be, we're not going to see Rio in complete disrepair 10 years from now because of this Olympics.
Yeah, I also think you see a lot of people protesting, but you have to remember there's always people protesting.
Oh yeah, every Olympics.
100% of the time there is, and that's not to downplay the people who are protesting. They have a right to do so. Then there's reasons they should be upset, obviously, but I think the one thing is once the ceremonies, you have the opening ceremony. I keep saying ceremonies, but once you have the opening ceremony, it almost feels like the start of a party. Like, sometimes you're like, oh man, I don't feel like going. Like, I don't. Like, you're just like, you make plans, then you regret making plans. But then once you get there, you have a fun time. It almost feels like that, where it's like, now that everyone's there and together, we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but
you go horribly wrong.
It also settles into a, and I'm as proud to be an American as anybody, but it also settles into this jingoistic, pom-pom waving, pro-American.
That's exactly what it does. That's exactly that's the whole thing.
That is the meaning of the Olympics.
If that's what you don't like, then obviously you're not.
The Olympics are not your thing.
But Billion, it's like, I mean, I'm all for, Americans winning gold medals. I'm not for having like little vignettes on NBC stuffed down my throat about, this female volleyball player with 3 kids. I mean, there's always these little special stories.
It's a great vignette, by the way, the one you're talking about.
Yeah, but that's all it is. That's all.
That's what people. Listen,
I don't know. I have the Olympics on right behind me, and there's no stories. There's just people swimming. Personally, yes, I do think that they have been overdoing some of the stories. Yes, they have.
Yes, no, they do, and there's no question. And you're right, Mike. And I'm playing the devil's advocate, so I agree with you to a degree. But at the same point here, I also know that, like, okay, I'm going to take my in-laws, for example, because I'm pretty sure they never watched the show. I'm going to use them for a second. And say,
okay, the day that they're watching, by the way.
Yeah, I was down this. Sometimes they do, because sometimes we end up on what's it called, Flipboard, and then they have watched it because like we're just on Flipboard for some reason. So anyway, but regardless, I mean, they are, they're not huge sports fans. They don't understand what I do. They met Kevin Allen. They're like, who's that guy? They met him this weekend. It was like, they just don't really get anything that's happening, right? It's like, yeah, he's only the most important hockey writer in the world. Yeah. But yeah, that's fine. Whatever, regardless. Yeah, I know he doesn't look like that. Maybe when you meet him, he's kind of unassuming and just, but that is he's been to 6 Olympics. So come on, just like, all right. But anyway, so they're watching the Olympics, and this is what. And they're like middle American. This is just Americans. These are people who, and they eat that stuff up like you could not imagine, Mike. It's like that is like for non-sports people, those documentaries are, and for me, I mean, I'm really into the NBC app. Like I'm not watching it live, but I'm watching the events I want to watch, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm casting it with Chromecast to my TV, and that's working really well. And occasionally the NBC app craps out, but that's all right too. But so I can watch those if I want to. I can not watch as I want to, or I can watch as much ping pong as I want to watch, or table tennis. But I can watch as much of this as I want to watch. And I learned a little bit. Like I watched one of those documentaries on Juno. Can we talk about Juno for a second? How is this event still legal? I mean, how is this? To me, like the Olympics. I understand the Olympics were come from a time and place where they were originally competed on by the Greeks in the nude, just in crazy ways, where all kinds of like battles to the death, right? That was how the Olympics, and we've clothed most of the athletes, with the exception of maybe the female beach volleyball players. But besides that, we've clothed all the athletes to this point, right? And that's
water polo players too. You can't forget about
right. Don't forget them either. Right, that's true. But most of them are underwater. And the beach volleyball is just ratings are just through the roof. So maybe we should go back there. But I'm just saying that regardless, this is if you're a ratings person, Juno, okay?
Judo.
Sorry, Juno's the movie. Juneau's the city in Alaska. The independent movie is made after. Judo, okay, is part of this. You can win by either asphyxiating the person, by literally knocking them out, like by choking their death. Are you going to tap out or nap out? That's the slogan. By choking a person, you can put them to sleep, and that is a winning. Or, or they can tap you and say, "Don't put me to sleep," and you win. Or you can dislocate their elbow. And
sorry, that just sounds so horrible.
I know, it does sound horrifying. So there's a certain move you grab. There's a certain move you grab. How is this? And that's okay. And it's like I will never tap out. I'd rather my elbow be dislocated before I tap out. I'm like, what the heck is wrong with these people?
That's what everybody in a Steven Seagal movie said.
Right. I mean, this judo is insane. And I know, like one of this I was talking to somebody about it yesterday, and this big female MMA artist right now who's everybody loves. MMA artists.
Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, right. You call them MMA artists? Is that what you call them?
I think she's like a fighter, like a
MMA fighter. MMA
She's
artist.
badass, and I love her.
Yeah, no, sure. And her parents were both like Olympic judo medalist or whatever. It's just, but this is like, it's so funny because we've seen all these like uptakes of sports. We've got we've got all kinds of modern sports in the Olympics. And now, but we still have this one that feels like it's a carryover from like ancient Grecian times or something like that. It's just, and it's funny to watch it is horrifying. I mean, I've been watching the female rugby is good. That's fun. That's fun to watch. If you haven't seen any of that, that's a new sport this year. Shooting, I didn't even realize was like the first gold medal won by the American 19 woman.
And of course, a lot of people outside the United States were making fun of this. Of course, the first United States medal was won in an event where something
Shooting,
was
right.
shot, which it's how typical of that European and mentality.
Right, like this is usually, I know that is insane.
But well, the funny thing is, and I retweeted this morning, is that the ratings from 4 years ago in London to now have gone down 12% over the first weekend. So, and I just made a flippant comment: the Olympics are dying, and I think that if the ratings continue to go down like that.
I want to know something about the ratings, okay? Because I want to know how many people are like me and they're watching it on their apps, and how the ratings on the apps are being counted in there. Because I think the diehard people are like me. We want to watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it, and I'm watching.
That might be part of it. I mean, I know that MSNBC, CNBC, some of the CNBC affiliates or the NBC affiliates are carrying them, and not everybody gets those channels, or not everybody knows that the events are on these channels. They're sticking, I think, mainly to the main network. And I mean, for people who are younger, millennials, who are more apt to go and use their phones or tablets to watch something, or watch things on social media or whatever. Most of the country, a lot of the people who watch the Olympics are still of that age group that they want to watch it on television. They want to watch.
Yeah, no, it's true, but but commercialized, they're getting commercials. When you watch the app, you're watching the commercials as well. So it's not like it's me. They're getting these. I'm hoping that I want to know how those ratings are. I'm assuming that they're counting this somehow in the ratings, but I don't know. But anyway, it's just it is.
The other thing too that might be worth discussing about ratings and just media coverage, it just continues to blow my mind just how everyday sexism pops up in the media with the Olympics. I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard about, there's a couple of them that happened after like the women's team. They referred, like they looked like they were standing in the middle of the mall. You had the woman who won the bronze medal, and they referred to her as the wife of a Bears linesman. And when the woman from Hungary won, the announcer literally said, "And there's the man responsible for her winning, for her breaking the record." Yeah, there's the man responsible.
Actually, I heard something funny about the. It was Olympic bronze medalist is wife of Chicago Bears.
That's the one.
And then the companion tweet was, husband of Olympic bronze medalist misses tackle, which will be the tweet in a couple months when he's in the NFL.
Yeah. Right.
But no, I mean, there's enough sexism to go around. I know that there were people commenting about the scantily clad female volleyball players, and I saw this morning, I think it was on the Today Show, where the female hosts of the Today Show were putting their hands all over the flag bearer from, I think it was Tonga. This guy was like completely ripped and this fantastic looking guy, and they're just like, I mean, when you have young people who are scantily clad, it's gonna bring those kind of comments and those kind of situations up.
But the ones that I'm talking about aren't really the comments about them being like half dressed because they're performing. That's what they wear when they perform. It's something just so simple. And it's just like, and the fact that people get attacked for commenting on that just shows how out of touch a lot of people are. And I know it probably makes some people uncomfortable, or they don't understand why it's a big deal, but it is a big deal because you have to think about half of your audience could be women, and if that's how you want to treat the people who are watching it, the people who are playing it, think about how the people who are watching it, they don't feel they're getting a fair coverage. It's not as interesting to them. And it's important to discuss just things that don't have to do with them being half-dressed.
Well, it's funny. I'm going to bring some up because I live with a really strong feminist woman who, has made it in a very dominated male world, and I all the time. So I'm very so aware of this whenever I see it on television, whenever I see something like this mentioned or anything like this, you know. And I remember we were joking around before about Amanda Kessel, you know, and how, you know, we would call Phil Kessel Amanda Kessel's brother, you know, this is the brother of Amanda Kessel, you know, but like, you know, I really wanted to do that. And you know, I was talking to my wife about this earlier, and we were joking around about this, and she said she thinks it is terrible, but she says what is not terrible about it, and this is like a little older perspective, but I think it's kind of cool, is that it's being discussed, like that it's actually that someone says something like this and it's noted right away that it's ridiculous, and that for years it was just said, and that, you know, and people would say, oh, that's ridiculous, but no one would ever really bring anything. Now I really think that anything is, and I think part of this is definitely social media and the internet, like checks and balances that goes on there, which can go overboard too.
Yes,
can go it can go overboard, but this is a natural reaction. It's going to have to go overboard for a bit, and that's sort of the way this works. It has to go overboard to get it to the right place, perhaps. And I think that's sort of the way it works in general when we pass things. And you know, just not to get too serious here, but if you saw Will Smith on the he was on the Colbert Report Colbert show late night Colbert or whatever show the other day, and I know you know you're not a huge fan of this show, Mike, but he's been doing a heck of a job lately. And Will Smith comes on there, and they ask him about, you know, a lot of the racial riots, the racial stuff that's going on now, and Will Smith brought up, well, he thinks that a lot of this, and this is Will Smith saying it, of course, an African American, very famous African American guy. He says that some of this he thinks is like the final gasp of some of the bad people out there, like that, or like that. And he says, what is it? Isn't as bad now as it was in the 1960s? No, you know, it's not nearly as bad. And he said it's definitely not as bad as it was in the 1860s. You know, and that was Will Smith being funny, but he's right. So, you know, a lot of this, what we're seeing is a world that is kind of finishing and fine tuning this out.
Well, and also we all have phones that have connection to the internet and can take video and pictures. So it's the difference that you're seeing is the fact that we have the cameras, that there's social media is there. So that's really the difference.
Nothing gets forgotten about or missed or anything.
No, but you know, I mean, I'm sensitive to things that are being said out there, but I do think that there's a certain segment in this country right now that is, you know, there is a sort of an overreach in terms of political correctness, and unfortunately, you know, one of the symbols of trying to be politically incorrect has been one of the presidential candidates, and I think, you know, I'm not going to get into politics, but I think, you know, he makes what he says, political incorrectness, look terrible because he's so over the top and so ridiculous. But I think that there it has been sort of a little bit of an overreach when it comes to political correctness, whereas, you know, people get offended about something that just really is not offensive. Or
and I've yet to see an example of it. So if somebody really feels that way, please, I'd love to see an example of it. I have yet to see one, because I generally adhere to the rule of that if a group of people are telling me that something is offensive to them, that is not my time to flex my debate muscles. I should take it for face value and try to understand where they're coming from. That's how I take it. If they feel that way, there's a reason they do, and maybe they were being oversensitive, but there's a reason they feel that way. So I always just try to put myself in somebody else's shoes.
No, I'm with you 100% there. And
I would love anybody who's listening, please send me an example that you think somebody was being too sensitive and is not really, you know, we're worried too much about being politically correct, because I am genuinely interested in that.
Okay.
No. And it's funny, and there's a lot, and we'll get on to hockey, but this kind of want to tie it up with this thing. I was watching a Seinfeld episode this past weekend, which is just happening on Hulu, and there's an episode where you remember when he buys the cigar store Indian. Do you remember this episode?
I know the cigar store Indian. I do know that.
He buys the cigar store Indian for Elaine because he's fighting with Elaine, and he's interested in Elaine's friend. And he thinks it'll make a good impression. And Elaine's friend happens to be a Native American Indian, and he doesn't know that she's a Native American because she doesn't really look like a Native American necessarily and everything. So he brings it in there and it starts on a slew of things that he's trying not to be offensive about, but he cannot help. Like he buys her tickets to a really nice show. He's like, "Where'd you get it from?" "Oh, I got it from a guy on the street. You know, and then just completely had to stop before he said scalpers or whatever.
Yeah.
And this whole thing was like completely, and it's a fascinating episode in terms of what we're talking about, because it's like here's a guy who's not trying to be anything but, you know, I called ahead for reservations. Okay, you know, so he's trying to. And if there's, and at what point does this? And there is a point, but I think that, like you said, Jillian, if someone is offended by it, it's hard for a person who's not offended by it to tell them that they shouldn't be offended by it. Like,
yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, like, if somebody was to get offended by something that I said that was like, I called for reservations, like, hey, the word reservation is offensive to me. I'm like, oh, I would apologize, and be like, how would you prefer that I'd say that in that context? Like, it's just a matter of having an open dialogue,
right.
allowing myself to put myself in their shoes, understanding that they're offended for a reason, and be genuinely interested in what they have to say, not just face value, but genuinely interested in having that conversation with them. And I think that's what a lot of us should be doing. But
that's a good idea. Let's start. That's a really good way to end it. Thanks for listening, guys. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, August 8th, 2016.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Jillian Fisher.
And I am Eklund. And you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to kind of fill you in on the hockey world, talk your ear off about other things beforehand.
Hey, there's a tie between the Olympics and hockey. Ledecky, I guess she's somehow related to the Islanders owner. So
I wasn't. It's not his daughter. It might be.
No, like the nephew, or I mean, she's a niece or something.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, we have to find that out. That's a good one. But we were talking about things we were offended by, and I'm offended by this article in the Score. I want to start there. I'm very offended by the final organizational rankings for all 31. That's right, you heard it right. 31 NHL franchises, and put out by the Score. It was 3 days ago, but it's worth talking about today because to me I just saw it about an hour ago, and I was just completely astonished by it. And this is the kind of thing that, of course, this is made for debate, and this is made for people to get mad about it and clickbait on it. But the reasoning that they have for some of their things is strange. The ranking of head coaches and general managers. The concept of this is organizational ranking. So you're ranking the owner, the general manager, and the head coach. All of these things.
And the farm system.
And the farm system, right. All these things are ridiculous to.
They're subjective. But not to spoil the suspense, but I mean the organization that is listed first overall has one of the best coaches in the league, has a Hall of Fame general manager, but has by most regards one of the deepest and most talented prospect pools in the league. It's just they're at stage one of their rebuild, and they're the worst team in the league. So the optics of that don't.
That doesn't even bother me. I mean, let's start by ranking.
What bothers me is how far down they put the Devils, given that the part of the reason that they had the Leafs so high is if you're going to use the general manager, well, don't forget that Shiro's only been in Jersey for a very brief amount of time. But then the team, a couple spots ahead of the Devils, they mentioned the Coyotes GM, who's been there for several months.
I think in that case, Julian, it's the fact that the Devils, and you have a point. That, I mean, the Devils organization is in the process of being reorganized under Ray Shero and John Hines. But they have to be reorganized because their former general manager was Lou Lamoriello, who, I don't think he stripped them bare, but they were under different financial constraints with Lamoriello, so there's extenuating circumstances. I think Shero, he's in 1 year has done a pretty good job, so that should have been taken into account. But we can't exactly put a lot of credibility into this list. I mean,
no, I'm not. I'm just getting angry.
But I'm going to point out some things as a writer that I think that this list is doing, and that I think is kind of strange. Okay, so first off, I'm going to start by saying, when you make a list like this, it's clickbait for sure. We talk about that, but it is also dangerous to your own personal reputation. So first of all, there is no. It's by the Score staff. Okay, there's nobody putting their name on this because, for obvious reasons, no one wants to put their name on this because. I know, for example, the Blue Jackets, who are listed 30th, with the 30th best head coach and the 30th best general manager, although given the 5th best owner, which is just 25th best owner. Sorry, I missed that one. I misread that. 25th best owner. that is the easiest thing to do in the world. Okay, put the Blue Jackets at 30th. The Blue Jackets are the easiest team to say is terrible on the planet because for some reason they don't matter to anyone in the Canadian media or in the American media, and it's a strange thing to admit, but it's true. And they just so you go back and you say I don't think at all Kukalainen is the 30th best general manager in the NHL. Like that's my opinion, having dealt with all the GMs. I think he is a very good general manager who has been in a couple situations that have been he got a team that was just devastated by injuries one year, and then another year had to make change coaches midstream, but he's set up a team that just last year, if you put this list on here last year, after he missed that whole series of season injuries, do you think Kukalainen would have been 30th? Because last year everybody was saying that team was going to win the friggin' Metro Division.
No, but I mean, he may have been in the bottom third or bottom half of the league, but they're taking into consideration they traded their number one center. They got back in the.
But they had to trade their number one center, and as much as I like that trade,
they had to trade the number one center because he didn't get along with their new head coach.
They were trading him long before that.
That's the worst head coach in the league. I mean, that's
the coaching. I mean, I'm not a Tortorella fan, but I don't know if I can call him the worst head coach in the league.
And I'm not either. But I'm just saying by reputation, by the fact that he was a train wreck in Vancouver, and now he comes in and inherits a team that went 9-0, and they were in the bottom.
We're Russ on here. You know what he would say right now, that this is one of the coaches with the biggest winning percentages and the most wins of any U.S.-born coach in history. That we're saying that John Tortorella is the worst coach. He is the best winning percentage and the best wins, the most wins of any American coach.
Well, we talked about the coach list when it came out last week because it is summer and there's not a lot to talk about. And Russ was of the opinion that, Tortorella may not be the worst, but he's, right now in Columbus he hasn't done a very good job, but it's been a small window. So it's a snapshot. You can see the sort of cursory information out there and why they're justifying them being the worst. By the
way, their farm team just won the Calder Cup.
I would hope that the Columbus Blue Jackets don't worry about what the score has to say.
I'm sure they don't, but do we take into account at all that their farm team just won the Calder Cup? I mean, and that their farm team winning the Calder Cup is that does play into the general manager. Okay, that has to do with those guys are there not because they have their own general manager, but because that you have a general manager who's drafting players and prospects, and the Columbus Blue Jackets are on the right track in a lot of ways.
You have to mitigate the fact that guys like Zach Werenski, who was a first-round pick, was playing down there.
Yeah.
They had Korpisalo, who played 30 games in the NHL, playing in the AHL. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from that organization because that the Lake Erie Monsters was a very talented team. But if you're talking about their organization and whether they're like well regarded. I mean, they won the Calder Cup, but that doesn't mean they have the best minor league system and the best.
No, it doesn't at all. I mean, they brought some guys in there to help them, some veteran guys to help them win the Calder Cup. No question about that, And but Korpisalo is not one of them. I mean, he was horrible in the NHL.
Young goalie, yeah.
I mean, in the NHL, he was really trouble. And Werenski, you could argue that he's down there because this is a good general manager who's not forcing him into the NHL yet. I mean, he's a guy who is really, a serious prospect and will be the Blue Jackets' best defenseman this coming year. So,
well, he may be one of them. I think Seth Jones will be their best defenseman, but
I don't know. It's hard to say, but
I mean, let's just say, I mean, the Blue Jackets are going to be much better on the blue line than they have been in the last few years with Seth Jones, with David Savard, with Werenski, and with Ryan Murray. That's a pretty good group.
That's a good young group too. It's a really good young group.
Do I think the Leafs are the best organization in hockey? No. Do I think Columbus is the worst? No. But
I'm just saying that I think, first of all, ranking owners I think is virtually impossible to do. I'm going to throw that out there right now. Like ranking owners is just really, I mean, I know a lot of owners, and it's one of my things that I think I know more owners than a lot of than most hockey writers. It's just something, for whatever reason, I've gotten to be friendly with owners over the years. And because they are the best places to go if you want rumors. I mean, you want to know what's really happening in an organization, talk to the guy who owns the team. I mean, I know a lot of them, and ranking them is something that I would never even try to do because every owner has its own unique city, his own unique set of circumstances that he has to deal with. Like every owner and how well he deals with those circumstances, you can rank him on that. But then to compare the Maple Leafs ownership group to the Columbus Blue Jackets ownership group is virtually impossible. I mean, you have totally different scenarios, right?
Right.
Completely different circumstances.
It's a person instead of two multi-billion-dollar
right.
Media conglomerate.
Right.
So it's like, it's.
And must I point out that the media conglomerates that media conglomerates probably shouldn't rank themselves as a top ownership.
Well, I didn't know if the Score was owned by Rogers or owned by Bell. So I mean, I'm ignorant on that fact. But if they are, I'm sure if they're not,
they're owned by one of them. I'm not sure which one.
Okay, so they're probably owned by Bell.
I think they're owned by Bell.
Yeah.
But I think that regardless, I mean, okay, so but they still only put themselves at third. All right, so the third best owner. Well, that's a good safe place. My just think is Columbus is such an easy target, and this article just shows it so clearly. So, I mean, after that, it does get confusing. I mean, they do have the Vegas owner ranked.
Yeah, that one was interesting.
Well, they had not available. They had an NA.
Yeah, they have
they
owners ranked at 26.
Oh.
Yeah, he's
they
kind
ranked yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
They ranked George McPhee, which and like they're basing George McPhee's ranking on what he did in Washington, not what he's done in Vegas.
Which is different. Those are two different things.
yeah.
Very, very different things.
No, very different things, and but they're similar in some ways. I mean, there are markets that are kind of. I mean, Washington with George McPhee's Washington is not the Washington of of the GMs before him either. So it's. I mean, because but George McPhee can also be credited for making Washington into like a legitimate hockey city. So there's certain things, where Vegas has still got a ways to go with that. But then you go to Colorado next up.
And they've really tore into Colorado, like they really did.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, and see, the thing is, I actually think that's in a way justified because you're talking about an organization that has had a lot of talent over the last few years. They have, they're clearly, even though they say that they're not a budget team, they are a budget team because if they weren't, Ryan O'Reilly would still be probably with the Colorado Avalanche, and he'd be paid more than Matt Duchene because based on performance, he probably should have made more. But because they have this self-imposed cap situation or self-imposed budget situation where nobody could make as much as Matt Duchene. And until now, Nathan McKinnon, who was a first overall pick, is making $300,000 more. Ryan O'Reilly had to sign an offer sheet. Now defensemen like Eric Johnson makes $6 million, so Tyson Berry can't make as much as him. They've cost themselves talent based on their limitations, and you have to give some blame to that to ownership. You have to give some blame to that to Joe Sakic, and I think you have to give some of the blame to Patrick Waugh for after his rookie year. He really hasn't been able to manipulate the talent that he had into a winning formula. So, I mean, they're an organization that's sort of wallowing right now. So I think they deserve a low rating.
Yeah,
I think they were a little harsher. I agree with most of what was said. I do. I just think that there are some other teams that, given how they were doing the ratings, it seemed like they were focusing on certain aspects.
Yes.
That I just thought was interesting that they didn't focus on those aspects on other teams. That's more of what I was saying,
right.
Or more of my train of thought. Like, yes, they are a team that, and they've placed a lot of faith in their members of the team from years ago, and I just think that they were a little bit too harsh when you think about some of the other teams that got better ratings.
For a more scientific analysis, the same criteria has to be used for every team. So you're right.
But we're not. It's an article obviously that's meant for debating. So
right.
Yeah,
it's doing its job, right?
Yes, exactly.
No, it is, and I do know that there is a definite distrust of Patrick Waugh in the Canadian media. I'm just gonna throw this out there. It's a little gossipy, but I think that why I wasn't surprised that they went after him a little bit. Part of the reason Patrick Waugh I think was hesitant to ever take a job with the Montreal Canadiens is because of this. Joe Sakic is definitely beloved in Canada. I would say so, but a lot of people think Patrick Waugh is running the show and Joe Sakic isn't. That's a big belief that's out there that even though Joe Sakic is the GM, Patrick Waugh is such a strong character. I think that they're really working together on this thing. I don't think it's really a matter of one running the show or the other. I'm trying to figure out who owns the score, by the way, just to be fair. It looks like the score owns itself right now, but it was bought by Rogers in 2012. So then it did not. But they bought some of the company. They spun out Score Media immediately prior to Rogers' acquisition. So I think Rogers owns part of it. I think that's how I can read this. But anyway, just that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to get that right if we could. Okay, so let's move on from Colorado.
Yeah, Rogers sold their shares in the Score in June 2014, so they do not own any more. They don't own any more interest in the Score.
Okay, so they don't. So we are. But they are this. So this is a media company that used to be owned by Rogers. So if anything, they would have had a vendetta against them. So that's kind of a good, maybe putting them at their putting.
Or they're just trying to carve out their own little niche.
Right. Which is cool. I have a lot more respect for the Score because of that. Anyway, the Colorado Avalanche, the Vancouver Canucks. Now giving the general manager. This is where I would have said, okay, yeah, the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, I think has been kind of lapsed in his duties at times. I'm not a big Benning fan. They put him at 31. Mm-hmm. That's possible. I wouldn't put him at I don't think he should be at 31. I think that, like you said, I think McPhee. We need to see what McPhee does before we put McPhee above all these people. But yeah, I think Benning has had issues. The coaching, though, I think actually, that's where they're missing the boat on this one. I think the coaching in Vancouver has been really good.
Well, at least in the first year.
From everything I've heard it's just that the Canucks had coaching has been. If it wasn't for the coaching, this team would have been a lottery team easily a couple times now.
Yeah, I just think that Desjardins did an excellent job in his rookie season. There's no doubt. But Benning has taken a lot of heat, especially from the analytics crowd after the Gudbranson deal. I've criticized them because I think they should be rebuilding that team. They have a number of players who are on their last legs, but they have gone a different direction, and they brought in Louis Eriksson, and they seem to be trying to make a run for the playoffs with the Sedins in their mid-30s and Ryan Miller. I mean, this isn't the '67 Maple Leafs where you have a bunch of 40-year-olds and you can make a run for the Stanley Cup. I think that their pursuit this year is flawed, and I think it's going to be a failure. But and that's apparently an opinion that was agreed with by the Score, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
Time will tell. Now they do get into they list the Oilers coach at number 15. I want to throw that out there as I don't think that he did anything this year to earn that.
That's reputation. But I mean,
it is reputation, but
it's reputation act. But the thing is, and I mean, McClellan is a very good coach. He was a good assistant coach in Detroit. He was a very good.
I mean, looking at what San Jose did after he left doesn't help the case. I mean, the fact is that for years we said San Jose had the talent to be there, and now they're not, right?
But you can also say that Dallas Aikens and Ralph Kruger and a couple other of the Edmonton coaches now look. You have to cut them some slack,
right?
Because it's proven now with a successful veteran coach like McClellan, who was able to get the Sharks into the playoffs for a number of years and work with talented players, that his failure last year to get that team anywhere close to being a playoff team was symptomatic of that core group just not being a winning core group. So I think that's what that rating reflects. I think it reflects that he's a good coach, but you have a dysfunction in Edmonton where this group of players just doesn't work well together, or you've got too many of the same type of player. And I think that's why he got a good ranking in spite of the failure of the Oilers last season.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. I can. But I just think that they're giving. Again, these are also subjective. I get that. The Canadiens general manager ranking 26 is another one I had circled. I don't think that he has shown. Man, what's going on with our echo here? Sorry. Let's see, Mike. Let's log out for a second here.
Okay.
It's Jillian muted yourself. So it's got to be Mike. It's only 3 people on.
It's all Mike's fault. Just blame
Definitely Mike's fault.
so much. It's easier that way, right?
Oh yeah. No, I know. They'll bring them back. But yeah, I mean these lists crack me up. They really do. I mean, there's some things.
They're good talking points.
Oh, they're great talking points.
They're good for getting a debate going, obviously.
I think the only one I think on here that you can legitimately rank is coaching, to be honest, because general managers are really hard to pin down as well. Because look at what's going on in Philadelphia. You could say Hextall's done a heck of a job as a GM in Philadelphia. Yet the Flyers still have, they haven't won a playoff series yet under him.
One of the things we said last week was the fact that 2 names in the top 5 of the top general managers listed were general managers who up till February of last year we were excoriating on a daily or weekly basis.
No, I know.
Jim Rutherford and David Boyle. And because Rutherford won a Stanley Cup and because he made some deals down the stretch and because he deserves to be up there, and Boyle pulls off what everybody seems to think was the best deal of the summer, getting PK Subban for Shea Weber. So
see, that's another thing I have trouble with, because they say that the Subban trade was a major blunder when they're talking about Bergeron in Montreal. That's impossible to say that's a major blunder right now. I mean, it really is. That's a completely,
I think it's way too early to say that.
That's giving no credit.
But you got to see how the season plays out.
From the point of view of the fan base, it's a major blunder.
That shouldn't be the general manager's job. That is more the owner's job, the fan base. And
also, the one that's interesting to me is, like, I don't know if somebody touched on this. How can you rank the GM and the farm system so differently? I think that they're closely linked.
They're definitely linked. They have to be linked, because that the farm system really is a huge part of a general manager's career. I mean, that's his job.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's a general manager like John Chayka, who just came in Arizona, and the farm system is Don Maloney's farm system, then you really can't give him credit for inheriting some of the best talent in the league. I mean, he's just there at the time that this survey is being done. I mean,
I agree, but then we can't also let's go back to the New Jersey Devils or McPhee or any of that.
Right.
They use that same logic.
Right.
That we say that we shouldn't be like, so again, this is where it gets complicated. Is how do you tell which is which if you're using different metrics and different ways to look at it for each?
Right.
Again, it's selective criteria. I mean, you could say, well, Mike.
That's why I can't help but feel that there is a bit of bias involved in this, because when I see Bob Murray as ranked as the 7th best GM, I also throw up some questions, okay? Because there's another Canadian darling as far as the way that Canadian media looks at him. And Bob Murray, you could argue that beyond the fact of handling his coaches, which has been pretty horrible in Anaheim, you would say, but really the biggest thing in Anaheim is that players he's put on the ice have really not performed. And have they bet on certain players that have not come through big time. That's and then to put him as the 7th GM. And then the other question I have is this. The Flyers owner, 21st. Who is the Flyers owner right now? Can you tell me? Because I'm in Philadelphia and I don't know who the Flyers owner is exactly. I mean, I know Comcast owns the Flyers, but without a single person, like, you could sit there and say, I mean, as the face of the franchise, and that's another thing that's kind of interesting in this whole thing is you have some owners that are both the owner and the face of the franchise. Then you have situations where you have these groups that have a person like Snyder, really didn't have the majority ownership in the Flyers when he passed away, but he was the owner of that team. He was the spiritual leader of that team, right? So, who is the owner? Why would the Flyers ownership be at 21? Like, what's the meaning of that? Like, a team that's sold out for how many years in a row now? Essentially,
that means that 8 teams are worse than a team that has faceless ownership.
Yeah, but I mean, you could sit there and say the owner. I can tell you that I've dealt with a lot of organizations, and one thing the Flyers, what you want to have an owner. If you're a team, what do you want to have your owner? You want your owner to be willing to spend money. Obviously, that's a big thing.
I can tell you that during the 70s and 80s, Leaf fans would have much rather had faceless ownership than Harold Ballard.
Right, and sometimes that's. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as and I'm not a huge Comcast person at all. I mean, I even have Verizon here in my house, but for it's Comcast, to say Comcast has done anything besides give the Flyers what they need as an ownership group is ridiculous. I mean, that team has all the resources that they need, and they have a network built around them. They have everything they could possibly do to publicize them. They have, I mean, really, honestly, that's bizarre to me. And then to put the Panthers ownership at 13. Okay, so that says the Panthers ownership is 8 better than the Flyers ownership.
Well, and that's being done in the window of all of a sudden, after years of frugalness, the new ownership in Florida has actually spent money. I mean, this is the first summer that they've actually gone. Well, excuse me, they had to spend money to get up to the cap floor a few years ago, and they made a run to the playoffs. But this time, they've spent actually to the cap ceiling and added Yandel and added Jason Demers and re-signed Ekblad and Trocheck and all these guys. So, I mean, they've actually been proactive and have thrown the money at the problem. So they're being proactive, so they're being given credit for being proactive.
Until this off year, I would have this off season I would agree with you. But this off season, there's a lot of people around the league that think the Panthers have gone down a really weird path.
If they're not successful, if they've thrown a lot of money at this problem like they did a few years ago when they spent money on guys like Scotty Upshaw and there were other players, a number of other players, and those contracts, the majority of them turned out to be, they didn't get the best bang for the buck. If that turns out to be the case this time, and they spent big money on Yandel and on Demers, and their defense isn't any better than it was last year, then they were stupid. Then they made bad judgments, and they'll take a hit. In this poll, they'll probably be ranked in the 20s next year if they do this again.
Yeah, I just don't know how you judge owners. I don't really know. I think what you're judging there is head coaches. I think what you're saying there, the stuff you think of the general managers, head coaches. But I don't know that. And you can say the owner is responsible for hiring the general manager. Okay, so you can kind of draw that link. But beyond that, and or is responsible for hiring whoever hires the general manager. But a lot of ownerships work differently, right? So. I mean, it does put the Maple Leafs at number 1, and it does bear some discussing. Putting the Tampa Bay Lightning at number 2 is also interesting to me. I do think that this is non-questionably. I could have told you before I read this who they would put as the number 1 general manager in the league, and it would have been Steve Yzerman, because Steve Yzerman's done a great job. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he also is he's also the GM who took Canada to 2 gold medals. He is the guy in Canada who the GM who they love. I mean, he is like the top GM.
Yeah, but I think it's more than that, Ek. I think it's not just more than Canadian parochialism. I think it's more the fact that Yzerman faced the most, and when we talked about this for months, Yzerman faced the most difficult task going into this offseason. He got Stamkos to come back at a reduced rate. Now, the tax situation, that money equals probably what he would have received from Buffalo or Toronto or Detroit, but still, he gets him for $8.5 million. He gets Hedman to take less to stay in Tampa. He gets Killorn locked up long term. So and all he's had to do so far is buy out Matt Carl. He's hit a home run this summer. And that organization is poised to contend for a Stanley Cup for another 2 to 3 years if they get Kucherov locked up on a long-term deal. So,
and I like John Cooper too. He hired a good coach, but it's not his first chance. It's not his first coach that he hired, but he did finally come upon John Cooper as a good coach.
But he hasn't done much wrong, so I think it's justified to give him that kind of lofty status.
Yeah, he hasn't done much wrong.
I agree. I was going to say, if this offseason alone, he has done a lot, and he's done. It's hard to keep a team in Stanley Cup contender as this long. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, they're going to be going to the playoffs, but the fact that you look at that team and like, okay, they can legitimately compete for the Stanley Cup for the next 2 to 3 years. That's pretty impressive. The work that he's done. I think it's kind of deserving that status that they gave him.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I mean, Yzerman had a lot of success right from the get-go in Tampa, right from his taking over the team. He's been very successful. And Cooper is one of my favorite coaches. He is a great coach, I do believe. And the Drouin situation, which was a disaster, the way they handled it, did play out okay. And I don't know that Yzerman could have handled it any other way.
Well, and sometimes it's good to be lucky, because if you
they got lucky on that one.
If you think of it, if Stamkos had not been injured, Jonathan Drouin probably would have been traded this summer because he would not have had the opportunity to reassert his value as a top young player if he hadn't gotten the opportunity to play in the playoffs. If Stamkos is healthy and plays through, and the thing is, you don't know what would happen with Stamkos if he would have been healthy. They got through Pittsburgh.
No, that's true. You don't know what's going to happen
Cup.
with Stamkos moving forward either. That's another thing. So like I had said, Stamkos is a risk, and they took the risk. They took the risk.
But if Stamkos won a Stanley Cup this year, if he had been healthy and he won a Stanley Cup, they may have let Stamkos go, or he may have said, "Okay, I've won a Stanley Cup here. I can go someplace else." I mean, that's the thing. It's the sort of that domino effect. If something else happens, it has consequences. So
in general, though, winning a Stanley Cup solidifies a person wanting to stay in that city. That's what I've seen, at least. Like that usually is something that because they go through a lot of emotions when they win that. They go through the parades, they go through all that stuff, and they really end up wanting to be there for life. And that is why sometimes teams get up in trouble because they have to keep so many players around after they win a Stanley Cup.
Especially a big player. It's not like he was.
Yeah.
If he was healthy, he was going to be one of the key factors in that too. So it's one thing when you're maybe a third or fourth liner, not that they're not valuable, but when you're the center and you're almost the face of that team, when you go through that parade, it's way different when you're that type of player. It's way different. You will feel a different level of connection after that.
Well, I completely agree. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the Vegas name as well. What's going on with that, Jillian? What's the latest? Because I actually didn't hear anything about that this weekend. I was running around.
They ran into a problem with the London Knights. It was too expensive. It wasn't worth the price.
Really?
They were fine in the U.S., but anytime in Canada, which is kind of important given that they're going to be playing in Canada, and lots of things in hockey happen in Canada, they weren't able to acquire, or it wasn't didn't make sense for them. So
really, I'm sorry, I'm hearing this the first time. I apologize. So my reaction to this is this is really crazy. The London Knights, honestly, are the ones
they trademarked Knight. I mean, the thing is, it's like we talked about this a little bit.
What year did they trademark Knights? Curiosity. Do anybody know that? Or,
I do not know off the top of my head. I could look it up.
Fine, yeah. You should know this off the top of your head, Jillian. This is the kind of thing. I would expect you to know off the top of your head.
Number of years. I mean, they've been the London Knights for at least 40 years, because I think.
Because that's why I say the Nashville Knights, this ECHL team that I used to follow. That was 10 years ago.
Yes, but who? I mean, honestly, it's the ECHL. Who really cares, or really hears that name being? I mean, you're talking about an NHL franchise.
Yeah, but there's still. I'm sure if you own the trademark, you're getting money. That's why you own a trademark. So they must have paid the National Knights must have paid something to the London Knights to have it.
I don't think the Orlando Solar Bears are going to be sued by the Chicago Bears. See, that's what I'm saying. Or the Hershey Bears. I mean, but anyway.
You shouldn't be able to own certain names like this. I'm going to throw this out there just for a second, because the Knights and the Bears, I mean, things like this, there's Knights all over the country, and high schools and colleges and pros, and I don't know.
The report last week was that Black Knights was out and that Silver Knights was in.
Oh Lord!
And they got rid of all venomous.
They're right. They're not going with any kind of creatures like snakes or
venomous creatures.
Yeah, right. The venom.
Scorpions, no scorpions.
No, scorpions. I guess was still in there, but they, so.
Scorpions sounds like a men's hockey league team to me. That's the problem. I have a tough with that one.
Yeah, so I don't know where it's going, but they're probably going to get this done, I would say.
Come on, London. I mean, I'm sorry, I just got to throw this out there. This is first of all, the Black Knights, no one's going to confuse the Las Vegas Black Knights with the London Knights. That's not going to be a problem at all. I mean, that's ridiculous. And also, we're talking about a military organization that they're being named after in an honorary way. I mean, and the American, and Canadian militaries have long-standing great relations with each other. I mean, somebody should step in, is what I'm saying. Somebody needs to say, okay, we got to get this done. This is ridiculous.
And it might be different though, strictly because that's in Canada, and everything that you're talking about is in the U.S. Because that's the problem, is that it's in Canada. It's the only problem that they ran into is that it's in Canada.
Yeah, but I get that, but that's why I'm saying that these trademark things. You own a trademark for several reasons. To make some money, obviously. You own a trademark to make some money. You own a trademark so no one confuses you with something else, right? And those are the other reasons. And you own a trademark to say that you are this thing. And you pay a lot of money. There's $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 for trademarks, depending on where you're doing it. Whatever. I've been down this road.
I
So
mean, I do get it because it's part of the brand, and I know you're saying that people aren't going to confuse Las Vegas Knights with the London Knights, but you have to remember they're both L's, and part of the trademark is it's distinguishing your brand, and it's both hockey. So they're both. It's not like it's not like a junior hockey league for kids who are never ever going to play in the NHL. These are players who are going to make it into the NHL, or many of them are, they're prospects. So I kind of get it. I see why there's that problem that they're running into.
And the London Knights have been named that since 1968. So it's, Daryl Sittler played
almost 50 years.
So.
But still, Black Knights versus Silver Knights. What's that?
Well, he said the name Knights is like in some form is still in play.
Right.
So it could be the Las Vegas Silver Knights.
Yeah, and maybe
I think the whole Knights thing with him is having talked to him. It's obviously about the military and the Black Knights group that he was. That's why he would do it.
And maybe there's a rights problem with Army. I mean, because it would be named after the Army teams, and I mean that could be a problem. If there's a problem with that, and then a problem with London and Canada, then Silver Knights might be.
And then something with the colors too, like the color scheme.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. Silver Knights. I don't think it's.
So apparently they have it down to 4 different names. That's the latest as of right now. Is that they have it down to 4 different names that they're working on, and that the color scheme that was set in stone apparently is no longer. He's okay with seeing some different options. So.
The color scheme was the Army colors, right? Wasn't it?
Black and gold.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Maybe this is an Army issue. I don't know.
No, because they specifically say that it has to do with the London Knights. Like it's exactly what they said.
The color scheme has to do with the London Knights?
No, the color. I think the color scheme is more of just if they're going to change the name, maybe it'd be more appropriate to be something different.
Okay. Yep.
The other thing too, I wanted to note about Las Vegas is I don't know if you guys, when you looked at the picture of the arena. I don't know how many times you had to look at it before you realize, oh, there's no advertisements on that board yet because there's no reason to have them yet.
That's strange.
And that's how numb we've become. Is that it took me, I think, 2 or 3 times to actually realize that there were no advertisements.
Wow, I know. I can speak for the I know Mike can too. It's for the moment when the advertising made it on the boards in the NHL. Like from watching hockey before that.
Yes.
And when it first came on, I was furious about it. I'm sure you were too, Mike. It was like one of these things like, oh my gosh, this is totally destroying this purity of the game, putting advertising on the boards. And now I prefer it to not having advertising on the boards.
Because we've become so
you become so used to there being some color. And when you watch it with not advertising on the boards, you really feel like, where are they playing? And did they transfer back to the 70s to play this game?
It just looks naked now without advertising.
It's strange.
See, the thing is that you see a game like a KHL game now or a game in the Swedish league, and you see, the conflagration of ads not only on the boards, but it's starting to be on the uniform as well. We're not going to get into that debate. And at a certain point, it gets to be a feast for the eyes and too much.
Or does it? Or do we just?
I was just going to say, I feel like the MLS, or when you look at any of the major soccer leagues around the world, like the English Premier League, the way they have it, where essentially the brand is so for the Seattle Sounders, for example, it's Xbox.
Right.
Right.
And then they have their crest. That honestly isn't that bad. I mean, I'm not saying that hockey should go that route right away or anything, but it's not distracting at all, I don't think.
I do want to throw one rumor thing out before we go today, and we are going to get back to the numbers game tomorrow too as well. So we'll get back to that as well. I've been on vacation. Obviously, they did a great job last week, and we had a lot of catching up to do. But we're going to get back to number 6. We left off at number 6. We're going to continue on to number 7. And we still have to pick number 6, which Shea Weber, by the way, is my pick. You should definitely vote for that when this goes up. So anyway, before this meeting, we were a little slow starting today. I was in a meeting with somebody, and there was one person who's a very influential person in the league on that call. And I said, listen, I got to do the show. I got to go. I gotta go. I can't hold this meeting anymore. And I said, and because you kept me on this meeting so long, I need something to talk about. I need a rumor. And he's like, okay, I got one for you. And he's like, this is for sure. I heard this morning. The Leafs are in on Cam Fowler. And I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, they weren't before, but now they are. Apparently the price has changed, and now the Leafs are strongly considering getting in on Cam Fowler. And I'm like, okay, so there you have it. So that is the rumor that I posted today. And it comes from a really good source. And I can't. Someday I'll be able to explain to you more about what this meeting was about. But you'll understand at that point. But this was a really interesting thing. So, Mike, I want your opinion, obviously, on this one right off the bat.
Well, I mean, the Leafs being in on a defenseman, it's not a, it's not. I mean, it adds up. It makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Fowler's price point is certain. He's $4 million another 2 seasons. He's the right age, and he's in his mid-20s. So that means that the Leafs would not have to pay him big money on a new deal until for another couple seasons when they're probably closer to being a competitive team than not. So I think it's plausible. I mean, from everything I look at Anaheim, they're looking to add scoring. And they have the strength up the middle. They have Getzlaf. They have Kessler. They have a guy like Silfverberg. They have Corey Perry, but they really need some scoring help on the wings. And whenever Fowler's name has been mentioned in connection with Toronto, the name that's come up is Van Riemsdyk. Mm-hmm. Now, if they've come off of that,
I believe they have, because I talked to people about that before, and everybody said that was a non-starter. Actually, that Van Riemsdyk was not going to be moved for Cam Fowler.
Right.
Kadri possibly, but not Van Riemsdyk.
Yeah.
So.
If they've come off of that, then I mean, Kessler has played wing in the past, and maybe if Kadri was involved in that deal, then you could have a Kessler move to the wing and Kadri be the number 2 center behind Getzlaf. That's possible. I mean, I don't think the Leafs. I mean, the Leafs have a good supply of young prospects. Maybe a guy like Jake Gardiner is involved in this deal because Jake Gardiner is under contract for the same amount. He's a former Ducks first-round pick. He didn't exactly get along with Randy Carlyle in Toronto early in his career, but it seemed to soften later on. So if they're basically afraid that they're not going to be able to re-sign Fowler in a couple years, then... but see, the thing is, I think an equal trade in terms of money. I mean, they're not exactly a cap team, but they have to sign. They have to sign Lindholm, and Lindholm is probably going to make more than what Fowler is going to make. So that's why I would think if they're going to spend money, it's going to be on a forward in exchange for Fowler, or maybe they want young, inexpensive talent, and that's how they save money for Lindholm. They trade him for prospects, and that's how they make it work.
Yeah. I think the latter. I think that second part is really more likely based on what I was hearing. But there's a lot of options there. But the interesting thing is Fowler and Shattenkirk are still coming up. That even though it feels as if teams have resigned to not moving them because they couldn't move them, they are not resigned to not moving them at this point.
There's a lot of stalemates right now. Kucherov is not signed. Ristolainen is not signed.
Right.
Cody Ceci in Ottawa is not signed. So you have, I think there's a collection of about 10 really prominent restricted free agents who are still unsigned, and we're in the second week of August, and training camp is a month away.
Right. Yeah. So we will see movement on this. But that was the good show, fun show, guys. Everybody, we appreciate all you watching us. Remember supporting us on Patreon.com, patreon.com/hockey, and check it out there. We can help to keep the show going, and we really appreciate that. And we will be back again tomorrow. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon. Have a good day, everyone.